In East Central Africa, across the equator, sits Kenya. Lying along the east coast of the Indian Ocean, Kenya's coastline land is swampy with a large amount of water supply. Though eastern land is extremely fertile, Kenya's geography is extremely diverse. Inland, the geography is far different from the eastern land. There are broad, dry plains, rocky mountains, and numerous arid hills. Kenya is known for two of Africa's highest mountains, Mount Kenya and Mount Elgon, and the lush greenery of the Mahu Forest. The climate varies from tropical and humid along the coast to the arid inland. Seasons either contains heavy rain or extreme heat. History of Kenya is quite fascinating. Historians believe people may have inhabited Kenya about since the beginning of humanity. In the 700s, Arab fishermen settled there, making a village on the coast, this being the first Kenyan settlement. Their village thrived for centuries to come, until the Portuguese invaded them and took over the land in the early 1500s. Portuguese enslaved Kenyans for their work. Portuguese reign ended in 1890s when the land became British Protectorate. They called it the British East Africa. Nationalist feuding started in the 1950s and the Mau Mau movement began. The people rebelled against the Kenyan government, and from then on it snowballed. The Kenyan citizens rebelling were mostly Kikuyu. The rebelling simmered down, but there was still a fight for independence. The push for independence rose in the 1960s, and by 1963, in December, Kenya had finally achieved full independence. The leader, Jomo Kenyatta, of the rebellion fight for independence was later elected as president. He was Kenya's first president. From then on, the country was ruled as a one-party state by the Kenya African National Union. Moi began his rule in 1984, and by 1987, Kenya's future began to darken. As leader, Moi put into law that if anyone insulted him, they would be arrested. Kenya's streets erupted in protest and rebellion. The government began relying on foreign aid. Disasters hit Kenya like epidemics of malaria, flooding of the East Coast, and ethnic violent attacks across the country. These cultural wars began with the Kikuyu and the Kalenjin groups clashed and a dramatic effect on Kenya. On August 7, 1998, the Kikuyu village were bombed, killing 243 people and destroying over 1,000 homes. Kenya has struggled to recover. Kibaki became president in 2002, promising to end the country's corruption. He cracked down on his police to stop the violence and made primary school education free to all citizens. Kenyans saw improvement and started to have hope. But in 2004, the progress began to stop and the disasters hit. The anti-corruption leader resigned and violence began to rise. On top of that, a large drought hit and 2.5 million Kenyans faced starvation. Descending into chaos and starvation, Kenya was in need of a better ruler. Raila Odinga was elected in 2007, but it was supposedly rigged in his favor. He stated he would help end poverty, stop violence, and he would help the starving. Ethnic violence was still increasing, and by 2008, 1,300 people died from these vicious attacks. Government representatives met to resolve the crisis. They decided they need leaders from the different cultural groups to find peaceful ways to resolve their issues. They elected 50 ministers to create national unity. This helped Kenya move closer towards peace. Further elections caused chaos and violence, but Kenya is pushing to make a recovery. The beautiful, wild Kenya will persevere through these hard times. The history of Kenya has shaped the people into a strong and proud nation that will continue to persevere.